Okay. Oh,
There you go.
So it
Recording
is.
in progress.
Right.
If anybody doesn't want to be recorded, keep your camera off.
Okay. So the other, can everybody see this again? Yes. Okay. So the other event that I would like to mention is the Self-Studies in Language and Pedagogy series, which is ongoing. It's organized by CTAR. And it started on October 29th. It's a really interesting event, and they have a series of different sessions. And this time, the sessions are on a book by Bell Hooks, which is Teaching to Transgress. And usually they read one chapter at a time, and then there's a discussion following that. So if you would like to join that, here's the link, or you can go to the BC TEAL site and register there. So today's presentation, the topic for today's session is Talking to Everyone in Canada, LGBTQ+Fundamentals and EAL. The presentation will be about an hour long, which will include a couple of 5 to 10 minute breakout rooms. Then we'll take a 5-minute break. We will resume with a 20-minute breakout room. The last half hour will be dedicated to reflection, questions, and discussion. So now I'm going to hand it over to Emily.
Okay. Thank you, Asifa. Would you, okay, so you're not sharing your screen anymore. Excellent. I will share my screen. Now, which screen shall I share? I have so many. This one. Let's do this one. Okay, so full disclosure, I made this slide last night, and it includes my favorite cartoon character, Ida, from the show The Owl House, which, if you haven't watched, is an incredibly lovely, it's a kid's show, but it's a kid's show that adults can very much enjoy. And it has a lot of really solid queer representation and discussion of like standing up to conformity and stuff like that. So there's your little media recommendation. So this is my presentation. It's LGBTQ+ Canadians, queer and trans inclusive teaching English as an additional language. Just like to thank the BC TEAL Charitable Foundation for funding this project. And yes, as Asifa has mentioned, my name is Emily Salja. My pronouns are she, her. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is a very brief content page. So I'm going to locate myself. We're going to go through some things to keep in mind. Then we're going to, oh, sorry, I thought someone said something. Okay. And then I'm going to walk through the teacher's manual, because that's going to be the bread and butter of how to interact with these materials. Most questions, I hope, will be addressed in the teacher's manual. I was gonna like snip it up and put it into a slideshow, and then I realized that I had already spent an incredible amount of hours on the actual material itself. So I figured we'd just go through it. Some breakout rooms are going to be introducing yourself to your colleagues in a very specific way, and we'll get to that. And some think, pair, share exercises, just that you may do with your class, but you're going to do them with each other first. Then we're going to have some reflections and questions and discussion, hopefully. Okay, so I moved to Kamloops, which is Kamloops, the Secwepemc. It's unceded territory, and it's the people of Kamloops are the people of the confluence. So the Tk'emlúsuk, and they've been here for centuries. It's where the rivers meet. I live at the one end of the river valley, and it's really beautiful here. You can look out and you can see everything that used to be underwater, which, granted, given the current climate crisis happening in BC right now, is a little stressful, but you can see the curves of the valley where everything used to be underwater. And it's a truly beautiful place, and I'm honored to live here. So I live and work on unceded Tk'emlúps-Wisiquetmik land. I live here with my Montenegrin and Albanian mother and aunt-in-law and my spouse, paying my respects to elders past and present, and I stand with the Tk'emlúps against the colonial project of Canada. Okay, so my name is Emily Salja. I have 3 years of teaching settlement English as an additional language as an out queer language instructor. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm out because I'm talking about this publicly with you. I'm not pretending that I'm not queer to make anyone more comfortable. I've primarily taught Link 4 and 5, but I have experience teaching levels 2 to 7. My ancestry is English and Scottish settlers on my dad's side and unknown on my mom's side. I am Jewish, queer, I have an ambivalent relationship to gender, and I hold multiple invisible disabilities. I'm currently finishing my master's in narrative therapy and community work. And like Asifa said, I'm working as a counseling therapist, working primarily with queer and trans people. Okay, let's see what we got. So, can you see this? No, it's paused, right? I like when I switched my screens. Okay, so it's paused. That's okay. So a few things to keep in mind as we move through this material is that every subgroup within the LGBTQ acronym experiences North American society differently and is impacted by other marginalizations. You might have heard the term intersectionality, which was coined by a Black queer woman to understand the differences of experience and the intersections of marginalizations that folks face on a day-to-day basis. So for example, Black trans women experience the highest level of violence in North America as they experience compound marginalizations for being, such as being Black in a society whose foundation is white supremacy, for being trans, and for being a woman. Okay. The second thing to keep in mind is queer history is broad and rich, and there's a lot of it. And if you or your students are interested in learning more about that history, there's lots of documentaries and books and articles to learn this from. When you're thinking about bringing this into the classroom, please be mindful of why you're teaching this module. You might have gay or trans people in your classroom. You might not know it. The point of this material is to focus on polite ways to interact with everyone, regardless of their relationships or gender, regardless of their faith, or regardless of their politics. Not to introduce queer people as a special topic. It's a strange feeling walking into a training and seeing the group of people that you are a part of shown on display like zoo animals. It's not comfortable, it's not respectful. So if we can focus on why are we doing this? The people in our classrooms are going to encounter queer and trans people. They might not know it, but they're going to. It's we're everywhere. So the idea is, how can you equip them, which is our job as settlement English teachers, how can you equip them to talk respectfully with everyone and give them the tools to do that, okay? And then the third thing is, this might be a lot of new information, and that's okay. You don't have to get it right away. You don't have to feel super comfortable with it right away. Just to keep in mind, if you find yourself getting confused or anxious, you might be overthinking it. It's a gentle suggestion. If you listen when people give you their right words to describe them or talk about them with, it's a lot simpler. You don't have to understand what a non-binary person is. You just have to use the language that they give you to describe them. Does that kind of make sense? I'm gonna assume that it does. Okay, so I am going to, Asifa, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
You can do a new share. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I want to share a different screen. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
share, it's okay, I'm gonna do it. I got it, don't worry. Okay, let's try this. Can you see LGBTQ plus
Yes.
Canadian?
Yes, we
Excellent.
can.
Solid. Love to hear that. So this is the teacher's manual. So again, little spotlight here, thanks to the BC TEAL Charitable Foundation for funding this project. They get a whole page to themselves. And here we have some contents. So there's lots of good information in here. I hope it's good. I wrote it, so I'm biased. So first we're gonna start off with.
It's really good, Emily.
Yay! Thank you, Asifa. I have a what is it? A testimonial. There we go. So there's a little introduction. I'm not going to go through it all right away, mostly because I've said a bunch of it already. But the main thing is that I ask that you approach this material with openness and with the understanding that we are none of us experts, and with a gentle heart. We are quite literally all in this together. So let's do this, yeah, nicely. So yes, I said all of that. Ooh, as a tag on to the why are we doing this? As an English teacher, our focus is language and our focus is culture. And so in that, you don't need to teach your students LGBTQ plus 101. That's not your job. You don't need to be an expert in that. Your clients or yourself do not need to be able to spot a lesbian in the wild. That's a game that I like to play sometimes as a lesbian, but it's not necessarily something that's super important to bring into the classroom. And it can actually end up driving, making that divide between your students and queer folks in Canada a lot bigger or deeper. So just keep it to the language. And then also, as an important disclaimer that I kind of already touched on, LGBTQ plus politics are inherently racialized. I am a white person. I cannot speak to the depth of experience that queer and trans people of color hold. That's not my place. What I can do is direct you to please seek out voices that are able to speak on the experiences of queer and trans people of color. There's so much richness and so much depth in those experiences. So please do not take my word as gospel. I am only here to talk about teaching English in a settlement context. Okay, so how did we get here? We already went through this. I copied and pasted it onto my slide. So we're gonna go quickly through just a very, very brief overview of history. And this informs why we're doing this, like why we're talking about queer and trans people in an English classroom. What's the point? So there's three main chunks as I see it. And again, this is my point of view, so take it with a grain of salt. But there's three things that stand out to me as contexts that shape queer and trans experience in 2021. And that's the event of colonization, so European contact with Turtle Island, which is commonly known now as North America, and the cultural and physical genocide of Indigenous peoples. The idea of the gender binary, the idea of monogamy and heterosexuality is imported by European settlers. That's not something I knew 10 years ago, but it is something I know now, and I have written a number of papers on it. There are references in this teacher's manual, so if you're interested in that, I highly recommend you go and poke around in the history of that. It's a very deep root of the state of events right now. And then we have police regulation, which is yet another step in exterminating and controlling queer and trans folks and their expression of life and joy. So the police as a colonial institution were developed to and continue to police Indigenous and Black populations and have historically regulated anything deemed deviant. So queer and trans people obviously fall into the deviant category in terms of how white supremacist society is built, right? So raids among gay bars and bathhouses were commonplace. Many elders were deeply traumatized and or killed. And as I don't know if this is something that you guys hear often, I do because it's in my circles, but Black trans women led the Stonewall riots, and they have been at the forefront. Black and Indigenous trans women have been at the forefront of any resistance to colonization or marginalization thus far. So there's further research available there as well. If you're interested, more than welcome to pursue that. And HIV and AIDS. I am helping my spouse grade. This is related. I'm helping my spouse grade discussion forums for a course that they're teaching through Algonquin College. And one of the discussion forums is about HIV/AIDS and whether you should have to legally disclose that you are HIV positive to potential partners. And so the reason I bring this up is because to this day, as of last week, many people still associate HIV/AIDS with queer and trans people, and especially gay men. If you think about going to donate blood, they ask you if you have had sex with a man who's had sex with a man in the last 7 years, I think. This is tied to a association between queerness and transness and HIV/AIDS that doesn't actually exist anymore. Not to mention there's lots of medical developments on that front. I think there's an mRNA vaccine that they're developing for HIV/AIDS, which is very, very cool. But your students will likely have some kind of association with gay people and AIDS. And that is an unfortunate truth, and that shapes their interactions with the world and the world in Canada. And it shapes quite a lot of our society, whether that's subconscious or conscious. So that's one of the big factors that informs why we do have to talk about LGBTQ+ people and not frame them as deviant in our classrooms. Okay, so topic overview. When I was developing this material, I was noticing that most of the trainings about queer and trans folks, kind of across the board, even if in like sensitivity trainings in other workplaces, were very much focused on what a queer and trans person was and what a hard life they have had and how you must respect them to be a good person. that's all well and good, but it doesn't actually help most people in the day-to-day. I've watched a lot of people walk out of those trainings more scared to say anything than they were in the first place. And that's not what we're trying to do here. It's kind of the opposite. We're hoping that at the end of this session, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable talking about these things. So I wanted to distill it down to two basic building blocks. We've got gender and we've got relationships. They are two building blocks in conversation, for better and worse, in current North American conversation. In the context of teaching settlement English, we're here to accomplish two goals. One, to teach polite ways to interact with anyone, regardless of relationship or gender, and teach current laws in Canada regarding the protection of all relationships and genders. So I'm just gonna scroll down here. Oh, it's so nice that it fits in the screen like that. Okay. So there's three basic factors in everyone's personal identity, most of which are nobody's business unless they're your own or a prospective partner's identity. So it's gender, whether you are a man, a woman, both, or neither, or somewhere on the spectrum that's way off in the left field that says, I don't know, I just work here. Whatever your gender or relationship to gender is, that's going to be something that impacts your identity. Linguistically, this is usually signified by pronouns. We have he, him, she, her, or they, them as a singular pronoun. There's also some new pronouns, and they're not really new. They come out of like the 60s and 70s and 80s that are gender neutral pronouns. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that here because gender neutral single pronoun they is already a big enough hurdle. So I think we're going to stick with that today, but just so you know that they are out there. Linguistics is very cool. I would recommend that you go check it out. Okay, so first we have our gender, and then we have the context of, is that gender the same gender or a different one than the doctors assigned to you at birth? So this is where trans or cis comes into play. We'll get more to that later. And then we have what relationships you have. And I focus on relationships because you don't ask someone that you met at a barbecue who they have sex with. That's not really any of your business, but you can ask if they have a partner. And that's more than socially appropriate. But asking them if they have a husband or a wife projects that kind of assumption that you have about their life and what relationships that they have and what kind of life that they lead. And so that's sometimes that this is a big part of someone's identity, and sometimes it's not really a big part of someone's identity. But it's not your job to assign your expectations onto someone when you're asking those questions, right? Okay, so then we have gender neutral language. Gender neutral language is an important tool in our quest to avoid gender specific questions such as, what does your husband do? Which is a question I have been asked more times than I can count. Not only in a teaching scenario, but actually a lot in a teaching scenario. But across the board for many years, and I'm very tired of the question. So some useful vocabulary is as follows. We can use partners or significant other. We can use spouse if you're married. And you wait until they correct you and they say, oh, well, my wife did this. And then you can say, okay, they have a wife. I got you. Parent, gender neutral term for someone who has children. So instead of asking like, oh, where's your mom? You say, oh, where's your parent? Just an idea. And that also plays into different contexts too. Like, what if their mom is dead? That would be a very uncomfortable question. Better to just keep it keep it simple. Child or kid instead of boys and girls. Sibling instead of brother or sister. Grandparent instead of grandmother or grandfather. And everyone, distinguished guests, friends and enemies. I don't care, just instead of ladies and gentlemen. Okay. And remember, practice makes perfect. This will not be easy at first if it's not something that you already do. It'll feel clunky, kind of like if you have ever learned another language, which is something that I'm assuming many of you have at least some experience in, given that we are all language teachers. So as a language instructor, you know how resourceful the human brain is when learning new language. It will, as everything does, get easier with practice. And you are not a bad person for it being difficult at first. Okay, so shifting paradigms. I am sure many of you have come across the mid-90s worksheets that say that are like, what is it? Controversial debate worksheets where you get to debate whether gay people should be allowed to get married and stuff. Please avoid using those worksheets. I'm also thinking about the countless pre-made worksheets that tell learners to match husband and wife or find the opposite of a woman. They all fit into the paradigm that cisgenderness and heterosexuality is the default, and it is the most expected. And so in moving through these worksheets, we are enforcing that. We're not taking a stand against it. So that's just consider that as you're moving forward. And then some common missteps. I wasn't sure about how to include this, but I've gathered a number of things that I've heard and other people have shared to me that they've heard that come up quite often. So here's some things to avoid saying. Just cross them off your list. You don't have to say them. Find something else to say. Are you a man or a woman? Why are you asking? How is this relevant? Is this I'm struggling to think of a context in which that might actually be relevant. A transgender. So transgender is an adjective. It's not a noun. So same as a non-binary. Yeah, no, that's an adjective. It's not a noun. So it's a transgender person or non-binary person, right? And this goes back to, we're language teachers. We know what adjectives are. A transsexual. Unless someone explicitly uses this word for themselves, maybe just don't use it. There's a lot of history behind that one, and it's not generally considered polite. They identify as a they. Again, back to language. Pronouns are pronouns, not nouns. So instead of saying that, you might say they use they, them pronouns. Okay. Are they a woman or a man? Where did they start? It's nobody's business and it's not yours either. A trans woman is a woman. A trans man is a man. A non-binary person is in the ether of gender and we don't know where they are. You don't need to know what stage of transition someone's at to use the words that they give you to describe them. So something to think about is someone's gender actually important to the statement? So here's some examples. This is my friend Sarah. You might remember her when she was a man and her name was Bill. She's a trans woman now and she owns a bakery. That's so much non-relevant information. You can just say, this is my friend Sarah. She owns a bakery. Simplified, just simplified. And when you misgender someone, I was talking to Sarah, she told me that traffic was really bad this morning. Just correct yourself and move on. It is chill. We are all human. We all make mistakes. It's if you're doing it on purpose to hurt somebody, that's not super cool. And then if someone uses the wrong pronouns for someone that you know is a different pronoun, you can say, oh, Sarah's pronouns are she, her. It's okay, now you know. It's not a big deal, just correct and move on. Okay, here's the references that I was speaking of. More than welcome to ponder through those. Okay, so what time are we at? We've got 10 minutes. Yes, love that for us. Okay, so I am struggling to be able to switch between my little Zoom bars in the way. Give me a second. I'm moving the Zoom bar so that I can, let's put it here. Can you see the Zoom bar in the middle of my screen? I can't tell. I'm going to go with no. I'm going to assume that we don't see it. Excellent. Okay.
Did you want to do a split screen? Is that what you're saying?
No, I just couldn't find the top of my Adobe.
Okay.
So I moved the thing, but if you can't see anything wrong, perfect. That's great. Super into that. Okay. So this is the slideshow for LGBTQ plus Canadians, talking to everyone in Canada. So we're going to do a breakout room activity. And now I can't read the breakout room activity, so hang on a second. There we go. This will work. Okay. So I'm going to throw you all into breakout rooms. If you can introduce yourself to everyone, we're going to use your name, your pronouns, and your favorite animal. So just to give you a little bit of information about how that might look like, here's some common pronouns. He, him, his, she, her, hers, they, them, theirs. Usually when you introduce yourself, it'll be like, hi, my name is Emily Salja. My pronouns are she, her. You don't need to say all of them. You can just say she, her is fine. And then my favorite animal is my specific cat named Hash Brown. Okay, so then just a very easy. And then if you can introduce yourself, and then if you have extra time at the end, just talk about your experience using pronouns in a day-to-day setting, if that's something you've ever encountered before, if it feels clunky or if it feels easy. Yeah, that's the vibe. Okay, so I'm gonna put y'all in breakout rooms, I think.
So there's 9 of us apart from, sorry, 8 apart from you. So
8 apart from me. So yeah, I think let's just do groups of 2 then.
Okay.
More. Yes, more breakout rooms. Thank you. Okay. So I will do 4 breakout rooms, and that'll be 2 persons in each room. Okay. There you go. 5 minutes. 5 minutes for that. You got, or Asifa, I think you're in a, yes, perfect. There we go. Nicole, are you able to join the breakout room okay? Nicole? Okay. Just gonna close the rest of the rooms. Let's give everyone a little bit of time. How is that for you guys, Cody and Joanne?
That was good. We just didn't know how long we should be gone.
Oh, that's okay. I have a timer on my end, so I was just gonna like bring y'all back.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
No.
You're all good.
Well, was it 2 minutes or was it supposed to be longer?
It was 5, but
Oh,
honestly,
5.
if you did it 2 minutes, I love that for you. We can get more done.
Okay.
Okay, everyone's gonna be kicked out now, so we should
Oh.
have everyone back. There we go. Okay, got everyone back? Yes? Okay,
We're back. Thank you.
excellent. How did
Emily,
that feel? Easy, hard? What's the vibe?
for me, it was quite easy, to share my information, my pronouns.
Mhm.
So yeah, I didn't have a problem with that.
Cool. All right. If no one else wants to stay, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, Emily, just people are just wondering whether this PowerPoint is available.
Yeah, it's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Okay,
the
that's what I
PDF of
thought.
it.
Okay.
Yes. If y'all scroll up, oops, sorry. No, I do not want to cancel. Okay, thank you. If you scroll up in the chat, all of the worksheets and slideshows for this presentation are in the chat in PDF form. So you will have them, you're not. Okay. And also I think they're uploaded onto Tutela at this point. So
Yeah, it should be there.
Yeah, they'll be on Tutela as well. Okay, so let's move on. So this is more of a teaching slide. So we've got, hang on, I can't see the slide. There we go, I've got it. Pronouns and people. Most people have pronouns that match their gender. Most people, not all. So women often have she, her pronouns. Men often have he, him pronouns. Non-binary people often have they, them pronouns. But it's not a hard and fast rule. And like everything with gender, nothing is set in stone. Okay. So if someone tells you about their pronouns, you should try to remember to use the right pronouns. It's respectful. And I think in most of the classrooms that I've taught anyway, most folks in the classroom hold respect for others as like a pretty high and important value. And so tapping into that as a teacher can be really, really valuable at this point. And in terms of listening and speaking practice, which I know we all love, listening practice means you don't have to ask for people's pronouns. You can just listen and hear about what other people use for them, what they use for themselves, and piece together the puzzle on your own. So there's that. And you can practice your speaking to ask people's pronouns. So you can say, oh, excuse me, what are Sam's pronouns? Her pronouns are she, her. And so listening practice would be like, where is Sam? Sam, I don't know where she is. Right. So it's like little clues that you can use. And that's something that there's instructions for how to use these slides in the teacher's manual. But we don't have 4 hours, we only have 2. So we're gonna not go through everything in minute detail. Okay. So we're going to do one more quick activity. This is going to be before we go into breakout rooms. I'm going to ask everyone to think about one thing that people can see about you something about your visual appearance. And one thing that people can't see about you, whether that's religion, family, likes or dislikes. Okay, so just take 1 minute to think about that. Okay. And then after that 1 minute, which I am timing at this moment, we'll go into breakout rooms and practice. Okay, everyone has their two things. One thing that everyone can just throw up like a thumbs up or something in the things. Yes, great. We've all got our things. I am going to open the breakout rooms, and now you're going to share with other people in the breakout rooms what those two things were. Okay. You're going to have 4 minutes, let's say. If you need more time, just please let me know. Okay. Hello.
Oh,
Hey,
so we're back.
so this is my favorite part. Am I muted? No. Okay,
No.
excellent. That's so when you heard that we had to share those things, what were you feeling? What were you feeling when you had to share those things with other people? I'll take any kind of volunteers.
For me, when people look at me, they can see I have brown skin, so they assume I must behave a certain way, or I must act a certain way, or that I eat certain food. But they don't really know exactly, right? Yeah, so it's kind of like people judging you just based on looks.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're thinking about, like, Ida, when you had to share the thing that people can't see about you, was that stressful or was that welcome?
Well, they find it strange. Oh, you're a brown person, but you can't speak your language. Things like that. Oh, you're a brown
Right.
person, but you don't know how to cook this dish.
Yeah. So maybe someone a little bit of discomfort there.
Yeah.
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 That absolutely makes sense. Thank you for sharing. Did anybody else want to bring up any feelings that you had during that exercise?
Well, comparing these two questions, when I was brainstorming ideas for things that people can see about me, I feel like there's so many I can choose from. And then when I was choosing one to answer for the second question, so there's also a lot I can choose from, but which one do I feel comfortable to share? Right? There is a certain of comfort level in that. Or how much or which one will my audience want to hear? Something that they might feel comfortable to know about me.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you so much. Anyone else? Thoughts, feelings? No? Okay. So I like this exercise a lot, and I did steal it from from an LGBTQ 101 presentation from, I believe it was Community, put it on for the workplace that I was at the time, which I think was probably 2016. So it was a minute ago. And I've used this a number of times in the classroom. And the transition between, like, people are like, okay, I'm thinking about, I've got 1 minute, I'm thinking about things that people can see and people can't see. Okay, I'm thinking, I've done the exercise, I'm good. And then you go, okay, now turn to the person next to you and share those things. And they go, I didn't think that was coming, and now I'm nervous. And so that feeling, tapping into that feeling with your classroom is paramount for understanding the kind of discomfort that people might have when you ask them, are you a man or a woman? Or do you have a husband? Which is code for, are you straight? Or are you Christian? Or any kind of question that might, like, I think it was Chris was saying, that might share more about them that they really feel comfortable sharing, right? So thank you for doing that with me. That was lovely. So the next part of that activity was, how do you feel about sharing? Are you happy, comfortable, worried, scared, unsafe, content? You can throw all kinds of adjectives out there, whichever ones end up coming up in your classroom the most, which ones are familiar. And then we have, why do you feel that way? And I've gotten some really interesting answers to this question. So this is answer question 3 on the LGBTQ Canadians worksheet. So this is the worksheet. This is the exercise we did first. This is the exercise we just did. And then I feel blank because blank. And depending on like the levels that you're teaching, you might be looking at this going, not a chance will my students be able to answer this in a compound sentence kind of way. This material is not about sentence structure. So as long as you throw some kind of emotion after I feel, and then some kind of context, be it a noun, be it an unconjugated verb, be it some sentence fragment that indicates they kind of get a reason behind the feeling, I usually let people use their little Google Translate dictionaries for these exercises, because I'm not actually worried about whether they're remembering the words or not. It's about the content, and understanding the content and the reasons behind the content is something that they can bring forward into the future when they might learn or remember the words. So just a suggestion to maybe relax the no phones in class rule for this bit, because it can make it a lot more accessible for folks who maybe just, they see the words that they don't know and they completely blank, which is fair. That's a fair thing to panic about. So giving them that kind of out of, yes, you can translate this, you can figure it out with help. That's all good in my books. Okay. So we are, yes, we're a little bit over time, but I do want to talk about this real quick because it's an introduction to why we're talking about this for using with students. So cultures have many rules. This is an exercise like, what kind of rules does your culture have? What kind of rules does Canadian culture have? Are they different? So usually I'll write this on a whiteboard because we're working from home now. That's not always useful. So I have a few here, cultural rules, slide 6. I have a few ideas about how to do this online, whether that's a discussion forum or a video audio submission, or even if they want to like call a friend and talk about this in their L1, more than okay, and then bring that back, Google Translate it into a submission of some kind. Very, very flexible on the like traditional language learning basis here, as long as they kind of get the gist. So if we go back here, that's the thing. This is the worksheet that goes along with it. So we're going to talk about the rules first, and lots of people, there will be many rules that people come up with. Cultures have all kinds of rules, which is very nice for this kind of exercise. And then like, what happens when you break the rules? So what happens if you don't get married? What happens if you're fat? What happens if you don't have children? What happens if you get divorced? Like what happens, all of these things that aren't ideal, but they do happen, and they're not like inherently morally bad. But what happens when you break the cultural rules? You don't go to jail, but something happens, right? And then we get to talk about, this is where we bring in the laws. So fundamentally, it doesn't matter how you feel about these things. The laws in Canada protect gender and relationships, technically speaking. So many people have different genders, many people have different partners. Anyone can get married, regardless of their gender or religion, what have you. I mean, many people change their genders or their partners over their lifetime. So it's not a static thing. So those are facts. Facts in Canada. They're facts globally, but that probably won't sit well for some people. So try and just talk about it like, well, this is how it is in Canada. These are the facts. And then I have some ideas of what partners and genders and bodies are like So we've got partners, they can be any gender. These are some words for not married partners. These are some words for married partners. We have genders, we have trans women and cis women, we have trans men and cis men, and we have non-binary people. And they have bodies, which are none of your business. And you don't have to ask questions about them because it's not relevant. Okay. And this is one of my favorite comics. I did get permission to use this from the author Sophie LaBelle. And it says, so you're a trans? Question mark. A trans girl, yes. That means you want to become a boy, right? No, I'm a girl. We honor the person's gender identity when referring to them. So trans girls were thought to be boys at birth. But then your pants, I mean, what's in, that's none of your business. Right, okay. So that's one of my favorite comics to refer to when we're talking about gender and how it may change and what is okay to ask and what's not. And so again, if your students want to use Google Translate to translate any of this, in my books, they're more than welcome to, okay? And then we get into the vocabulary, and I know this is the moment that many people have been waiting for, is the vocab. And there's a reason why we started with the history and the context, and that's because if you hand people a list of vocab before talking about the history or context, that adds to the othering factor. Okay, so that adds to the feeling like these are people who are aggressively different from me, which is not what we want to foster. Okay, I think it's probably time for a break. I think we should probably take a break. Let's take a 5-minute break and then come back. We'll talk a little bit about vocab and how to introduce that, if that's all right. And then we'll go into discussions. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good break.
Emily, can you repost your resources or the links? Because, you know, people can't go all the way back to the top, it seems like.
Yeah.
So maybe at the end so that they have it right then.
Okay, yes, I can. There we go.
Thanks for sending those, Emily. I was screenshotting everything through the whole conversation. And now I realize.
Oh my goodness, no. No, you don't need to do that. It's on Tutela and it's also, yeah, it's in the chat. Like, these.
Thank you. And then when I had to step away with my kid, I was worried I missed so much.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're all
It's
good.
also
You're
being
fine.
recorded, so
Yes.
you know it'll be available to view.
Oh, speaking of recording, I should probably stop recording because it's the break. I think we're in too deep now. I think I'm just going to keep recording.
You might mess up when we come back and you have to start recording.
I know, right? I think it's best that I just don't touch it. And
Well, this is awesome. I'm going to go delete all my screenshots now.
perfect. Yes, free up that storage space, right?
Yeah. So where would they be?
Water.
Nicole, where do you work? Sorry, I can't hear you.
Of course you can't, because I muted myself. I work and play in Mission.
In Mission, okay.
Yes,
That's a nice place to be.
it is. Luckily for me, I'm 2 streets up from the highway, so the flooding hasn't affected me. It hasn't really affected much on our side of the highway other than the mudslides. And Hatzick Lake residents were underwater as well, but
Wow,
yes,
that's so devastating, you know, for so many communities.
my heart breaks, all those animals. Just, I think that's the worst part for me. We as humans we can get out of that stuff far more easily than, yeah. Yes, and you?
I live in Burnaby, very sort of on the border of Vancouver and Burnaby, and teaching at Success.
Nice.
Are you teaching at the moment?
I am an outreach coordinator, so I do tutor training and arrange for the tutor learner matches. And yeah, I don't facilitate any courses or classes right now. I'm in the works of doing some stuff with hospice to try to take the heat off them. They're backlogged, 100 people waiting for grief and bereavement counseling. So I'm putting together a journaling program to try to help some of the Widows Club. To be involved, and but that'll be the only program I might like facilitate, but for now, just to see how that goes. But yeah, this is very interesting, and I'm glad I have the information because I'll pass it on. This will be a subject in our tutor training next. Right?
Perfect.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, many of our tutors are retired people, so they may not have much knowledge of this. Yes, this will be great.
Perfect. I'm really interested in the journaling program that you're putting together, though. That's it's very it's aligned with the master's that I'm doing right now. So I'm doing narrative therapy and community work.
Yes.
And there's a lot of that of collective documents and reauthoring stories, and especially remembering stories, and introducing loved ones who have passed away, and figuring out which pieces do we take and hold with us, how do they inform our lives going forward, stuff like that. So that's very, very cool. I'm stoked to hear that.
Great. I'm glad that you think that's a good idea. I was trying to think how literacy could help, you know.
Even I know a few people in my program, instead of being like therapists or whatever, they have shifted to helping people write their memoirs, especially in hospice. And so that can be anything from a picture book to like a short novel. And that's been apparently really, really powerful for people who are contemplating what the end of their life is going to look like, and what they want to leave behind.
It's very cool.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm excited that we're going to start that in January.
So neat. So neat. Okay, are we back, or is everyone back?
I think
how are we feeling?
I think everyone's back.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and continue as if everyone was back.
I think there's one person missing, but that's fine. We can go ahead.
I know Cody had to duck out after the break, so that's More than okay. Okay. So just I'd like to just go through quickly how to approach teaching, or like my approach of teaching vocabulary, especially around like, the phrase that comes to word is special interest groups, but it's not quite real. But especially like when you're teaching like vocabulary about a certain demographic of people, and how to do that respectfully, without making the vocabulary the end all and be all of what people take away. Because if people just have words that they don't fully quite understand, they're going to be so scared to say anything. And they're going to be constantly on the lookout of how to spot a trans man, so that they can use their new vocabulary. And I'm like, please don't. It's just, I know it's tempting. You have all these new words, you want to use them, but maybe don't focus on that one. Maybe step aside from that one. And I do say this a little bit. This is I'm not sure what page this is. Page 10 in the teacher's manual. This is the gender vocabulary exercise. Is it? Yes. Okay, so most of the vocabulary exercises are clothes exercises. And this is, you can adapt this up or down depending on the level and the familiarity of your students with the material. But especially for lower levels like link 3 and 4, just copy the words from the slides. You can have the slides up, you just copy and paste. These are the slides right here. And then this is the same for the Facts in Canada bit. It's just a close exercise, cut and dry. It's just getting people's hands used to writing or typing the words, and practicing having them in a sentence. Okay. Same with the partners and genders. So again, these are all just very basic close exercises. And then this is the gender and vocabulary exercise. So there is no extrapolation here, and that is intentional. It is just a practice for filling in the blanks, and then you can use that filled in blank piece of paper as a reference for when you forget what a trans woman is. So it can be a reference document in the future, but for now we're just creating the reference document. So you'll have this up as a slide, and then this up as a copy the words directly on the slide, writing 1, I think. Yes. Okay. And then this is the thing. I'm not going to go through this in detail because I trust that you all can read it on your own time. So that's going to be a thing. And then it's going to be the same thing for discrimination. We're tying this very closely to the laws in Canada for a reason, and that's to make it impersonal, because it is not a personal thing that gay people are allowed to get married. It is a legislative thing. It's part of government. It's not a personal attack on your religion or beliefs or ideas about culture. It is merely a fact in Canada. And I know that, like, if you do have critical thinking skills and you're saying, well, like, the government is not actually impartial, you're correct. But in terms of teaching the material, keeping it at a governmental level that is not a matter of belief or opinion is how I've found things to go most smoothly. Because it's not your beliefs versus theirs. It's what's in the legislature and the country that we are currently living in. Okay, so discrimination is unfair treatment of someone because of their skin color, religion, gender, politics, or who they love, language, or ability, and it is illegal in Canada technically. Okay. Then we have a fun and fancy truncated version of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in pink and blue. The reason I chose this color palette, by the way, is because pink, white, and blue is the trans flag colors. It is not to imply baby boys or baby girls, just so you know. And then here we have again, it is a basic clothes exercise. So there we go. And here, the moment you've all been waiting for, what is a lesbian? Okay, so here we have families and relationships. Notice how I do not call this the LGBTQ section. I call it the families and relationships section because that is what we are talking about. So remember, anyone can have any kind of relationship. There are many kinds of relationships. As long as everyone is happy, it is okay. So that's the thesis statement of this. Thanks. So here we go. LGBTQ plus Canadians, LGBTQ, and then heterosexuals. I did add the heterosexuals in at the end so that the straight people can locate themselves. So we have lesbian women are women who love women. Non-binary people can also be lesbian. All right. You just fill in the blanks. This is a very straightforward close exercise. It leaves no room for opinions, which is key. As I put in the teacher's manual, resist answering any student who wants to know how to tell if someone is transgender or gay. There will be at least one of them. The only right answer is there is no way to tell. And that is going to be very frustrating for a lot of people, but it is the truth. And it's what we're going to stick with. Okay. So here we go. Yes. Okay. So in the worksheet, no, let me go to the worksheet. Let me do it. Okay. In the worksheet, we have gender words and relationship words. And this is going to be the key part of the reading competency of this curriculum. Okay. So we have the gender words, we have the relationship words. Then we have these lovely slides. I'm biased, I love them. That gives a little bit of a description of a whole bunch of queer and straight families with varying levels of gender. There's even a single person with a dog, very cute dog, okay. All right, and so the exercise here is you're gonna circle the gender words. These are the gender words. You're gonna underline the relationship words. These are the relationship words. So you can go through this as a class, or if you're doing an online class, if you want to post it as like an assignment or something like that. There's a bunch of instructions. There's a bunch of instructions in the thing. This is what it looks like at the end. This is the key. And so this is a way that we can introduce the vocabulary with the context and ground it in completely fictional but tied to real life examples of what this might look like out in the wild as you might encounter it. So we're teaching this as a comprehensive thing, not as a give you a crossword of gay identities. Okay, there we go. And then let's see. That's the gist of the first Talking to Everyone in Canada. So that's it. There's another smaller slideshow, which I would suggest that you do after that, and it's called Small Talk in Canada. And it is the biggest thing. It's good for community, and it's also good for family exercises. But the biggest thing is, how do I say this in words? Asking risky questions or personal questions. So here we are. There's some examples about you really want to know if your neighbor has a partner. And so it's an example of how can you ask that in a way that they can decline. Also, when someone asks you what religion you are, or how much you weigh, or how much money you make, there's answers of how to say, no, I don't want to talk about that in a polite way. So that's fairly straightforward. That's in the chat as well. You're more than welcome to take a gander through that. But let's see here. At the end, we have 2 discussion questions. These are for your classroom. How can you be polite to everyone in Canadian culture? And what are 2 new things you learned today? Instead, for our discussion, I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare back to this one and ask, what was easy and what was hard? What stood out to you and how might you use this? And any kind of reflections that you might have had, or discussions, things that you want to bring up, things that you want to talk about. We have 20 minutes. I'd made the executive decision to nix the breakout room, and we're just going to do this as one big room, if that's all right. So yeah, anybody wants to go first? Any ideas?
Emily, I really like the idea of just including it, like not as a separate unit, but just it's part of everything, like it's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
So like in December, as you remember from Success, December, we usually, the theme is family. And instead of othering all of this vocabulary and all this, just including it as part of life, as part of family and relationships, like not making it a separate thing. It's just part of life. So I really love how you've just made it part of just everyday learning, is as it should be. So this is really great.
Thank you. Thank you, Yuko. You're an inspiration.
Yeah, it's just for us living our daily lives, it's just normal, and we should just treat it as normal part. And then, that part that you touched on, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we shouldn't be isolating this as a special thing. It's just part of it. It's just part of what all Canadian people have. Yeah, exactly. So I'm loving how you're making it just part of everyday life, and the learning of every newcomer. It just should be just part of it.
Thank you.
I think the part about, avoiding othering as much as possible, especially with link classes, because it's always going to be turned around to be kind of an us and them situation. It really gets to be that quickly, it seems, in class.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. No, thank you.
I think what stood out for me, oh, by the way, I'm Aida.
Hi,
I think what stood out for me was learning these gender words and these relationship words. Even I myself did not know like what is cisgender and all that. So it's good to know, and then we can pass this knowledge on. I'm definitely going to use some of these material, the ones, the closed passage text. Yeah, it's good for link 3, link 4, that level. And they learn new stuff because they're in Canada now. So some of the culture is different in Canada than what they experience. So it's definitely a very good experience. I like your presentation today.
Thank you so much, Ida. Yes, I don't have your name up here. Whoever has their hand up, your name's not showing up. So
hi, I'm Megan here.
Megan. Hi, Megan.
So I work at the Community Adult Literacy Program tutoring program in Parksville. So I'm on the island, and we actually set up tutors with learners one-on-one. So we train them to teach the learners, whether it's basic adult literacy or English as an additional language. So I really like how you create these worksheets that are very fact-based. So there's not actually controversy that people can't be discriminated against or shouldn't be. It's just how it is. And so that can make the discussion a little more effective. Also, I will now go back to the library of resources that we give our tutors and check them out, because I probably, like, there's some old ones there. I'm sure there's some very problematic worksheets and sets of scenarios. So thank you for reminding me to do that.
Hey, my pleasure. I've weeded out my fair share of sketchy worksheets in resource libraries in my time.
Great presentation, Emily. That was wonderful. It gave me a really good idea how to use these resources in the right way. And I have a question. You know, our classes are sometimes made up of people from communities that are really conservative, and they're homophobic and transphobic. How do we talk about this with people who make up our classrooms? Yeah.
Are you thinking like more, how do you start the conversation, or how do you continue the conversation?
Well, both.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah.
Fair enough. So the way I approach it is a little different, because I'm when I was teaching, and I'm like, full disclosure, I'm not teaching anymore. I'm doing therapy, which is a much better fit for me. But when I was in the classroom, I did disclose, because people would ask me, like, you know, are you married? Because I have a son. I have a very nice son who makes a lot of money and would make you a very good husband. And so I am married. And then the questions about, like, well, what does your husband do? What is your what do you? I'm like, I actually don't have a husband. And so that kind of opened up the door. But for folks who like are kind of just coming into this either without lived experience or with lived experience that they don't feel comfortable sharing, which is more than okay. I think the biggest thing is to tie it back to, these are tools that you will need in Canada. And I mean, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, a lot of cultures that are like currently hold a lot of homophobic or transphobic ideas. Oftentimes those are tied to colonization from Europeans. And so, like, especially, for example, like First Nations people in Canada, Two-Spirit people in many nations have a long sacred history of being honored and being medicine people, and you know, monogamy wasn't, you know, heavily enforced as a norm, and gender wasn't policed in the way that it is today. And so I think it's important to recognize that when people in our classrooms bring transphobic or homophobic ideas into the classroom, it is, I mean, for me especially, I have to look at it like, my ancestors really messed things up. And that's a lot of why this is in the classroom today. And so, and then again, that's me from a white teacher standpoint. In terms of, so that's like a little bit of just understanding where that might be coming from. And in terms of just introducing the material, the smoothest thing that I found that works with people who are just really gung-ho about hating gay and trans people, it's like, that's okay. You can hold your personal opinions, but it is illegal here to do anything about those opinions. Like, your feelings are perfectly fine and valid. That's, yeah, well, not valid, but like, you know, your feelings are real and your cultural location is real, and that's fine, but you can't do anything about it here. It is federally illegal to do things about your homophobia and transphobia. So in the interest of not getting in trouble in Canada, these are some tools that you might need to survive. And it's especially tying it back to things that are relevant for them. So for example, if you ask somebody what religion they are, or what religion they practice, or what culture they practice, or what something that's like important to them, you say, okay, well, that's protected too. Under these laws, you are protected, and queer and trans people are protected. And that's the state of the world right now. That's the state of federal law in Canada. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. So I'm giving you the tools to move through this landscape. However you want to like phrase that. I know that that's a super inaccessible way to say it, but you know, it's up to both of us to figure out how you can succeed in Canada. And these tools are important for you to succeed in Canada. So I don't know, does that kind of like speak to what you're asking?
Yeah, thank you. It's always tricky, but yeah, I think if you know, you base it on the legalities in Canada, it would probably work. Yeah.
Usually conservative people have like some tendency to respect the law, even if they don't super agree with it. So yeah. Are there any other questions or things that you found like really confusing? There are no stupid questions right now. So anything that you're worried about, anything that didn't really make sense?
No, I'd like to thank you because this is good. This is clearing a lot of stuff up for me. My kids are so well informed on stuff and they try to tell me and I just look at them. I'm lost. So I'm really, yeah, I'm much better at reading stuff than trying to listen to them tell me stuff in their, because they have their own language as well. Their slang.
Oh yeah.
They're always using words. I just learned what sus meant, you know, sus. It's tough. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. This is really good. I mean, I'm on a journey and this is helping me. So always trying to learn and, you know, things absorbed for myself, and then hopefully in the future, interactions with students and people, clients coming to Canada and everything. So this is really great. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, yeah, Yuko is like, I think probably one of the pioneers in success in bringing LGBTQ language into the classroom. So
yeah, I'm still learning too. So like I'm just like a sponge trying to absorb different perspectives and how to deliver, for low levels, especially, just everything. So yeah, this is super helpful, Emily. I'm glad you got a chance to deliver this to like a bigger group.
Me too. Yeah, I don't know if this helps, but stick figures, whether you draw them on the whiteboard in Zoom or whether you draw them on the whiteboard in the classroom, stick figures are invaluable for demonstrating, especially for low levels. You can draw a stick figure on the board and be like, okay, is that a man or a woman? How can you tell? Oh, you can't? It's purely based on your own assumptions? Oh, well, draw like two stick figures with a kid and be like, okay, these two are men and they have a kid. That's allowed in Canada. Surprise. But yeah, that's one of my favorite tools. But okay, thank you very much, everyone, for sticking around for 2 hours on a Friday morning. I'm going to, Asifa, can we email, do we have the emails of the people who signed up?
No, I don't have everyone's emails.
Do you think Eventbrite does?
Not sure.
Okay. Well, Joanne,
Okay.
I got your email in the chat, so I will definitely send them to you. And
I
then
have
also,
Cody's email and Yuko's I have, and Ida.
okay, cool.
So the rest,
Okay.
maybe
Well,
they.
Thank you, Nicole. I will, yeah, anybody who puts their email in the chat will receive these as a PDF. That's okay. And then for anyone else, they are on Tutela, free to download. So you're good there.
Yeah, and please let people know, your contacts or your teams, that Emily is going to be presenting again next week.
Yes.
It's a really
Next week.
important conversation, and I hope that more people can attend. So yeah, please let people know again. Thank you so much, Emily. That was wonderful. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for doing this.
Have a great rest of your day, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Really appreciate your presence.
Okay, bye, Em.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Yuko. It's so nice to see you.
And love to Ev, too.
I will. I'll give him a big sloppy kiss on the cheek for you.
All right, see you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chris.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
Just remember. All right.
All right. It's
Great
just
job,
us.
Emily.
Thank you.
We made it.
We made it. I super didn't prepare for this.
No? Well, it didn't seem like it at all.
That's because I've been working on this material for 2.5 years.
It's just part of you, right? So, but
Yeah.
no, that was really good.
Thank you.
Again, I wish more people had attended. From 17, we went down to 9, but
That's okay. Oh, hang on. I need to
Yeah.
stop recording. Give me a second.
Okay, sure.
I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to stop recording.